Okay, TEKS 9D, exponential equations and their attributes, practice. So before you do this video, you need to make sure that you have watched all 3 videos. So the ones on exponential graphs and the one on exponential equation notes. That way you know how to do it before you come and do this and get a bad grade. Okay, so I'm going to do number 1 and number 2 with you, and then you're going to do the rest on your own. So remember yesterday we learned that the standard form for a exponential equation is y equals ab to the x power. Remember, a was always our y-intercept, and b was growth or decay. And remember, that depends on if b is greater than 1 or if b is less than 1. Okay. So on number 1, first I want to know if it's a growth or a decay. So we have to see if b is greater than 1 or b is less than 1. So since the number inside the parentheses is b, 2 is greater than 1, so that means this is a growth. And then our y-intercept is the number outside of the parentheses, so in this case, 4. And then remember, the asymptote is always going to be y equals 0. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, okay, we're going to look at whether it's a growth or decay. So we're looking at the b value, and the b value is inside the parentheses, so 0.45. Well, 0.45 is a decimal, so it's less than 1. And since it's less than 1, this is a decay. And then the y-intercept is always the number outside of the parentheses, so in this case it's going to be 4. And then the asymptote is always y equals 0. Okay. So let's look at number 3. So on number 3, you're going to tell me, is it a growth or a decay? The y-intercept and the asymptote. So to determine if it was a growth or a decay, what you should have done is you should have looked inside the parentheses, because this is the b value, and you should have noticed that 3 is greater than 1. Since 3 is greater than 1, it's a growth. Okay. The y-intercept is always the number outside of the parentheses, so in this case it's 1/2. And the asymptote is always y equals 0. Okay, now you're working on number 4. Number 4, you're telling me if it's a growth or decay. You're telling me what the y-intercept is. And then you're telling me the asymptote. So what you should have put for growth or decay is you should have looked at the b value inside of the parentheses. And you should know that 1/2 is smaller than 1, so this is a decay. And then our y-intercept is always outside of the parentheses, so in this case 5. And our asymptote is always y equals 0. Okay, now you're working on number 5. I want you to tell me if it's a growth or a decay, what the y-intercept is, and what's the asymptote. So what you should have done is you should have looked inside the parentheses, because this is our b value, and notice that 1.45 is bigger than 1, so that means it's a growth. And then the y-intercept is always the number outside of the parentheses, so in this case 3. And then the asymptote is always y equals 0. Okay. Now you're working on number 6. So what you should have put for growth or decay is you should have looked inside the parentheses and notice that 3/4 is the b value. Well, 3/4 is less than 1, so this is a decay. And then you look at the y-intercept, which is outside of the parentheses, and you know it's 1/2. And then the asymptote is always y equals 0. Okay, now you're doing number 7. What you should have got was, for growth or decay, that b is inside the parentheses. In this case, b is 3, and 3 is bigger than 1, so this is a growth. And then the y-intercept is outside the parentheses, so in this case, 4/5. And the asymptote is y equals 0. Okay, go ahead and work on number 8. Okay, what you should have got is that you look at, for growth or decay, that this 14 inside the parentheses is your b value. 14 is bigger than 1, so this is a growth. And then our y-intercept is outside of the parentheses, so it's 1/4. And our asymptote is y equals 0. Okay, go ahead and work on number 9. Okay, what you should have got for number 9 for growth or decay is you notice that 7 inside the parentheses is our b value. 7 is greater than 1, so it's a growth. Our y-intercept is always outside the parentheses, so this case it's 3. And our asymptote is always y equals 0. Okay. Lastly, go ahead and work on number 10. Okay, what you should have got for number 10 is that you notice 0.15 is inside the parentheses, and that's our b value. Well, 0.15 is less than 1, so this is a decay. And our y-intercept is always outside of the parentheses, so in this case it's 1.67. And our asymptote is always y equals 0.